HIV away. Now they can share everything except HIV. Pre-exposure prophylaxis is HIV prevention intervention for persons at high risk of becoming infected with HIV. Tenofovir emtricitabine was approved for FDA for PrEP in July 2012 in combination with safer sex practices for pre-exposure prophylaxis PrEP to reduce the risk of sexually acquired HIV-1 in adults at high risk. In May 2018, FDA also approved PrEP for adolescents at risk for HIV. PrEP and PEP, are they the same? PrEP taken before exposure can reduce the risk of getting HIV by 90%. PEP taken within 72 hours of exposure can prevent HIV. PrEP is needed because condoms are not the only acceptable method for HIV prevention. As per IPREX study, there is 92% decreased chance of HIV infection in those who had tenofovir emtricitabine. As per Partners PrEP study, there is 90% decreased chance of HIV infection in those who had tenofovir emtricitabine. Tenofovir emtricitabine is the only approved guidelines recommended medication when taken once daily will significantly reduce the risk of sexually acquired HIV infection when used along with safer sex practices. Hetero's tenofovir emtricitabine ANDA has been tentatively approved by US FDA. So with PrEP, love without inhibitions, now they can share happiness, not HIV.
Every journey begins with a dream. At Camber Pharmaceuticals and parent company Hetero Drugs, our dream is to improve the quality of life through affordable, high-quality medications. Hetero is the largest privately held drug company in India, with over 15,000 global employees in over 120 countries. For over 20 years, Hetero has been a world...
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Camber Pharmaceuticals, a subsidiary of Hetero Lunch Symposium. Camber Pharmaceuticals is the fastest growing generics company in the US, has now set foot in the Philippines. Camber's parent company, Hetero, is a global leader in antiretrovirals or drugs used for the treatment of HIV. APIs and finished dosages, has been in the business for over 25 years. Camber Hetero is the #1 supplier of ARV to the Department of Health, and we are working closely with the World Health Organization in its advocacy against HIV/AIDS. Camber is the first and only pharmaceutical company in the Philippines to introduce and market new preventive strategies against HIV, pre-exposure prophylaxis or PrEP, and post-exposure prophylaxis or PEP. And to warmly welcome everyone, may we request on stage the country manager of Camber Pharmaceuticals Philippines, Mr. Manoj Sihag.
Good afternoon, respected doctors. On the behalf of Camber Hetero, I welcome all of you to this great platform. I'd like to take you through some of the major highlights about this company, Camber Hetero. So a few years back, we received feedback from some Filipino doctors that we in Philippines, we don't have an access to the most advanced ARVs, antiretrovirals in Philippines. Now we are committed to this cause, and we have registered 15 ARV molecules with Philippines FDA, which are available in Philippines, and you can prescribe according to the patient needs. We are also committed to bring the most advanced therapies in the future to the Philippines, like dolutegravir, bictegravir. So dolutegravir, I like to give the good news that probably by next month we will get an approval from Philippines FDA of dolutegravir, which is as per the recent recommended guidelines by WHO. We as a company, we support the WHO vision of 90-90-90, and we expect your support as well to achieve this 90-90-90 goal of WHO. So for any requirements of your antiretroviral drugs, whatever is required as per the needs of the Filipino patients, please get back to us and we'll be happy to serve you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Manoj Sihag, Country Manager of Camber Pharma Philippines. In the 2018 report, the Philippines has been ranked as the country with the fastest growing of HIV, not only in the Asia and the Pacific, but we're now #1 in the whole world. Although HIV prevention strategies such as education, counseling and testing, dispensing of condoms, needle and syringe program for people who inject drugs, and antiretroviral drug therapy have been in place in the country, coverage remains low. While there is a need to scale up prevention activities, new HIV prevention strategies should already be introduced to ensure availability of comprehensive services as soon as possible. Recommended in 2015 by the World Health Organization, pre-exposure prophylaxis, a tenofovir-containing regimen can be administered in HIV-negative individuals with substantial risk of infection. Offering hope and protection in the form of once-daily doses, PrEP, a combination of tenofovir disoproxil fumarate and emtricitabine, is now available in the Philippines. For us to be enlightened on what PrEP is all about, let us watch this short audiovisual presentation about PrEP. Let us cut that part of the presentation, ladies and gentlemen. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome our chair for this afternoon. Our symposium chair completed her clinical fellowship in adult infectious diseases and research fellowship in HIV at the Philippine General Hospital. Currently, she is the HIV and AIDS core team leader of SHIP Clinic, an HIV primary care center. She is also the medical director of Sustained Health Initiatives of the Philippines, a nonprofit organization that focuses on capacity building of HIV primary care physicians in the country. Let us all welcome Dr. Caterina Kaitley Ritana.
A pleasant good afternoon to everyone. I'm here to introduce our two esteemed speakers for this afternoon. Our first speaker is Dr. Opas Putcheren. Dr. Putcheren received his medical degree from Khon Kaen University in Thailand and completed his residency and fellowship in infectious diseases at Chulalongkorn University. He then proceeded to do his research fellowship in HIV and drug resistance at the Department of Immunology and Infectious Diseases at the Harvard School of Public Health, and his postdoctoral fellowship at the Section of Retroviral Therapeutics, Division of Infectious Diseases, Brigham and Women's Hospital, Harvard School of Medicine. His research interests include long-term complications of antiretroviral therapy and HIV drug resistance and co-infections in resource-limited countries. He is a director of Emerging Infectious Diseases Clinical Center, Thai Red Cross, and a senior lecturer of the Division of Infectious Diseases, Department of Medicine, King Chulalongkorn Memorial Hospital, while serving as a professor at the Faculty of Medicine of the same university. Dr. Putcheren is currently a WHO expert for the development of its guidelines for antiretroviral therapy and is the executive secretary of the panel for the development of Thai ARV guidelines and a scientific member of the Thai STI guidelines. Dr. Putcheren's influence extends beyond his home country, as he has also provided support for the education and training for HIV physicians from Malaysia, Myanmar, and Laos. Ladies and gentlemen, our speaker for this luncheon symposium on PrEP, ED PrEP, and PEP to prevent HIV, Dr. Opas Putcheren.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank Canberra and Hetero for invitation to give a talk today on HIV prevention, focusing on pre-exposure prophylaxis and post-exposure prophylaxis to prevent HIV infections. These are my disclosure. I have funding from many pharmaceutical companies, but none of these influence my talk today. Today I'm going to give you overview of the HIV prevention that I will focus on PrEP mainly, and if I have time, I'm going to talk a little bit on post-exposure prophylaxis by giving ART. And it's my job to give you the overview of the basic science and clinical trial that related with PrEP. And I'm going to move forward to identification who need PrEP in our clinical practice, and what do we have in our hand in terms of the tools for PrEP options and PrEP strategy for people who have hit risk of getting HIV. And I'm going to talk about the side effect and concern when you prescribe PrEP, what you need to concern in individual who will be getting PrEP. And if I have time, I'm going to touch a little bit on future of PrEP, what do we have and what we're going to have in the future. From this slide show that we have advanced in HIV treatments. We have known HIV virus for nearly 40 years. This is 5 years younger than me. And we have a lot of advance on HIV treatments. In the early of the epidemic, we have monotherapy followed by dual therapy, and right now we have the combination of potent antiretroviral therapy for our patients. And we are now having advanced on the treatment. In near future, our patient will no longer taking oral medicines. We're going to move towards an injectable form of HIV medicines. In near future, the patient may come to the clinic to receive injectable form of HIV medicine every 2 or 3 months interval. This is the advance of the treatment, and we now having injectable form of ART for both prevention and treatments. And also in near future, we may have the implantable form, which is the small devices that put in the subcutaneous tissue and release the drugs. And the patient come to the clinic every 1 year to get the change to change the small devices underneath the skin. And finally, we hope that we're going to have HIV cure in the future, because most of the funding in the US and in many countries, we are now looking towards the strategy for HIV cure. But right now, we have the ART that's very potent for our patients. So when we look at what is the effect of ART in our patient, this is the life expectancy of Thai HIV-infected individual after ART initiations. This is a modeling study that conducted in Thai HIV patients a few years ago, and this model took the registration of the patient from our Thai system, and we look at the survival rate of HIV-infected patients after treatment, and you can see that the life expectancy of our HIV patients depends on the level of CD4. If you start treatment at very early stage of CD4, for example, greater than 350, the patient will live longer or as long as the other, as long and comparable to uninfected HIV individual. For example, in this graph, if the patient started treatment at the level of CD4 greater than 350, and if they start the treatment at age 20, they're going to die at age 81 years old, which is comparable to uninfected individual or longer than HIV uninfected individual. This is the effect of HIV on the life expectancy of our patients. The other effect of treatment on our patient is transmission. As you know that there have been many clinical trials show that if you give treatment for the patients, and if the patient has the partner, in patients who receive the treatment with undetectable viral load, the risk of transmission to the other people is zero. We call U or U equals U. So this is the effect of the treatment on the transmission. So when we talk about ART is now convert a deadly disease to chronic non-communicable disease. So this is the effect of the tool that we have right now. However, when we look at the epidemiology of the disease, we still have new cases every day. This is the data in 2018 from WHO. Last year, we have 1.7 million new cases of HIV infections, and majority of the newly infected HIV patients are adult patients. So every single minute passed, we're going to have 3 new cases of HIV infected adults, and after this session, we're going to have 182 new patients. So we have the problem with epidemic. We cannot. We have the problem with prevention of HIV transmission, although we have advanced in treatment. This is the same thing that happened in Thailand as well. We have last year, we have nearly 500,000 new HIV-infected cases in our countries, and we have at least 17 new cases per day, and most of them are men who have sex with men. So this is the same thing that happened everywhere in the world, that MSM population is driving epidemic of HIV infection. I think same here. So what we have to do, we have a lot of advance for treatments, but we still have the problem with prevention. Why there are new cases every day? This is because the proportion of the people who get the treatments and have undetectable viral load is maybe very low in our communities. When you look at this slide, there are some people who have HIV and they've never been tested. They never know their status before. And some of the patients in our community, they have tested, they know HIV status, and they may not have been treated. And some of these patients, they have been treated, but the virus is not in undetectable level. So this proportion of the patients may have risk, may transmit the virus to the other people. So this is the reason why we still have the problem with transmission, despite we have the advance on the treatment, because of the number of total patients on the treatment with undetectable viral load is very low in our communities. So this is the reason why we need the other bio-intervention to prevent new cases. We need to think about the bio-intervention that prevents HIV transmission. In this case, I'm going to talk about PrEP and other biomedical interventions. But actually, when we talk about the biointervention or the tools for HIV prevention, we have many things to do. Not only PrEP. PrEP was only one of the elements for prevention. We have many tools starting from before exposure to HIV, during exposure, and post-exposure. For example, if you have the patient with history or current use of intravenous drug use, PrEP is work, but should be together with the other strategy. For example, they need to come to the clinic and have the cycling exchange if they are IVDU or inactive intravenous drug user. This is another tool that we need to think about when we give the prevention for HIV. Or in patients with high risk for getting STI or having sexually transmitted infection, you need to treat them with the appropriate treatment, because STI enhance HIV transmission too. This is the example of the other modality that can be done together with PrEP implementation and PrEP implementations. This is a very busy slide, but this is the slide that summarizes the major clinical trials in PrEP studies from the beginning of PrEP era until now. At the early stage of PrEP era, we have the data from animal models, and people try to give the drugs to the monkeys and look at how how drugs will help monkey to prevent transmission. And we have learned from the monkey models that drug works very well, and the drugs can achieve the level in the rectal and vaginal mucosa of the animal, and can protect those animals from HIV infection. And then the trial then moved towards to the humans. The first major trial for HIV prevention in human history is IPREX study that published in 2010 in New England Journal of Medicine. IPREX study is the first trial that showed efficacy of TDF-FTC versus placebo for HIV prevention among men who have sex with men and transgender women. In this trial, if we look at intention to treat analysis, risk reduction for HIV acquisition was 44%. However, if we look at subpopulation who adhere very well to the medications, the effectiveness of PrEP is nearly 100%, 92%. So if you have PrEP, you take PrEP and you adhere well with the medication regimen, PrEP will help you from getting HIV transmission. This is the first trial that proved the efficacy of PrEP in MSM populations. And then 2002, we have another two trials that conducted in heterosexual couples, TDF2 and partner PrEP study. These two studies look at the efficacy of PrEP by giving TDF-FTC in heterosexual populations, and look at the efficacy of PrEP for HIV prevention. In partner PrEP study, the efficacy of giving PrEP was 75%, and in TDF2 study, the efficacy was 62.2%. This is the data in heterosexual transmission. So PrEP worked in heterosexual transmission as well as the MSM population. And in 2015, we have another important study looking at the efficacy of on-demand PrEP. On-demand PrEP is another dosing strategy for giving PrEP. Usually in the past trial, they use once daily PrEP, but in IPERGAY, they use on-demand PrEP or event-driven PrEP or 2-1-1 PrEP regimen, compare with placebo and look at the efficacy of on-demand PrEP for HIV protections. And from this trial, they found that giving on-demand PrEP could reduce HIV transmission, and the efficacy of on-demand PrEP was 86%. So on-demand PrEP works in MSM population. And this year, we have another trial that conducted in many countries of the world called PRENAVIA trial, looking at the efficacy of on-demand PrEP versus once daily PrEP. And this is a preliminary data show that in both arms, the risk of getting HIV was very low and comparable. So this is the movement towards on-demand PrEP. And this slide summarizes the data of the previous slide, and you can see that the efficacy of PrEP vary from 10% to 90% in some population and some study. Why it happened? Because in the study that show very low effectiveness or efficacy of PrEP, the adherence rate of the subject in the study was very low. In the IPREX study and for example, in IPERGAY study and PROUD study that have very high effectiveness of PrEP, most of the subjects in this study have very high adherence to the medication. So the medication will protect the subject if the subject adhere very well to the regimen. This is the key of PrEP implementations. So I have already talked about the advance and the efficacy of PrEP from the clinical trial. And when you prescribe PrEP, what you need to do, this is the next step. You need to know the cycle of service. Before giving PrEP to your clients, you need to choose who will be benefit from PrEP. Those who will benefit from PrEP is those who have high risk for getting HIV. And then you know who, and then you screen. You screen them with HIV tests and make sure that they don't have pre-existing HIV infections. You screen for renal, bone, optional renal, and bone density if possible for monitoring the side effect of PrEP, and then you can prescribe PrEP. And patient come back to your clinic again to refill if they feel that they have continuous risk for getting HIV. This is the cycle of service, PrEP service. Who will benefit from PrEP? This is the CDC recommendations. There are 3 groups of patients that will benefit for taking PrEP. The first group is MSM populations, sure, because this group has very high rate of getting HIV. And the second group is heterosexual couples or heterosexual individual who have risk for getting STI and HIV. And the last group is people living with drugs, intravenous drugs. If they share the needles, if they share the equipment to inject drugs, PrEP is indicated to prevent HIV infection from needle sharing. Or some of them may have risk of getting HIV from sexual transmission. They are eligible for PrEP. So this is the group of population that may get the benefit from having PrEP. So next step, what to screen. This is the recommendation for the screening before you give PrEP to individuals. You need to screen HIV first to make sure that they don't have pre-existing HIV infection, because if they already have recent or chronic HIV infection, they don't know this. And then you give PrEP, 2 drugs will not work for HIV suppression. They will end up with resistance. This is a key. You need to exclude HIV infection before giving PrEP. And the other thing that you need to know is hepatitis B serology. People with chronic hepatitis B may benefit from PrEP, but should be with close monitoring. And the other important test that need to be checked before giving PrEP is renal function, because tenofovir, which is the combination of the TDF-FTC, may have the effect on bone and kidney. So kidney function is a concern when you start PrEP, and PrEP should not be initiated if the clients have low creatinine clearance or baseline renal disease. For bone density, it's optional. Some people may have risk to have bone density loss from PrEP, for example, if they are older or they have some condition that may interfere the bone mineral density. For example, some people may they are taking steroid, or current smoker, they may have high risk of bone density loss when they are on PrEP. So this 4 tests should be done before giving PrEP. The other important thing before you start PrEP is to screen STI. This is very important before you start PrEP and along the way when people come back to get PrEP. There are some studies suggest that PrEP users usually have STI, and they have high prevalence of STI, and STI should be done. STI screening should be done in these populations. The recommended STI for screening is all hepatitis virus, including A, B, C, chlamydia and gonorrhea infection, and syphilis. So these things are the tests that you need to to send before you prescribe PrEP. And then when you prescribe PrEP, you need to think about the regimen. There are now 2 regimens in the PrEP guideline, but the preferred guideline, the preferred regimen in the guideline is TDF-FTC. Now we have TAF-FTC as an optional in some specific population. I'm going to show you the data later, the data of TDF-FTC versus TDF-FTC for PrEP. And then when you prescribe PrEP, you need to give them three months supply, and then the patient, the clients need to come back for evaluation again, whether they have HIV infection, they have STI, they have any problem with their bone and kidney. And then if there is no contraindication, you can restart PrEP again. This is the step of refueling PrEP. For the dosing option of PrEP, we now have two options. The first option is once daily. Patients take the medicine every day until they think that they don't have any risk anymore, they can stop, but they take once daily. So, and the other option is once daily, is on-demand PrEP, or event-driven PrEP, or 2-1-1 PrEP. This is the same name. On-demand PrEP can be used in some specific circumstance. After giving PrEP, don't forget to give patient counseling on adherence and risk reduction strategies. This is very important. So this is the diagram showing how to use on-demand PrEP. On-demand PrEP is giving 4 tablets, 2 before sexual exposure and 2 after sexual exposure. This strategy has been proved in ibogaine study and in Prinavir study that can reduce risk of getting HIV transmission. This is in the recommendation of the WHO. This is the WHO guideline that launched in July 2019 on how to choose the people for getting ED PrEP or OD PrEP. ED PrEP or event-driven PrEP may be suitable in some cases who want ED PrEP if they think that ED PrEP is convenient for their lifestyle, or may fit with individuals who have infrequent sexual interaction. For example, if they have sex less than 2 times per week on average, or in some people who are able to plan sex for at least 2 hours in advance, or in people who can delay sex for at least 2 hours. This is the situation that ED PrEP may be offered. But on the right-hand side of the slide, this is the contraindication or the population that ED PrEP is not recommended. First, cisgender women or transgender women. Second, transgender men having vaginal or frontal sex. Heterosexual populations and people with chronic hepatitis B is not eligible for ED PrEP because it's on and off phenomenon. It may cause a reactivation of chronic hepatitis B if you put tenofovir on and off in very short period of time. So these are the contraindication or concern when you use ED PrEP. However, PrEP can be switched in one individual if they think that they don't have high risk. This is the statement in the WHO guideline, state that you can switch from once daily PrEP to ED PrEP if individuals think that they don't have frequent sex anymore, or they can switch from ED PrEP to OD PrEP. So it's more like flexible in our practice to select ED PrEP or OD PrEP. So for the concerns of PrEP, this is a reason that some people don't want to give PrEP to the clients. The first factor is bone safety. These 2 studies conducted in IPREX look at the bone density loss in people receiving PrEP, and they found that the rate of bone density loss in people receiving PrEP was minor. And after stop PrEP, the bone density loss will return to normal level later, 1 or 2 years later. So I would say that PrEP has very minimal effect on bone density, and there is no fracture in people who receive PrEP. And the other factor is kidney functions, because tenofovir causes proximal tubulopathy and rising creatinine. In these 2 analyses, found that 1/3 of the people who receive PrEP may have increase in level of creatinine, but the level was very mild. Only 23 people from 1,000 people have major increments of creatinine from this analysis. So giving PrEP is relatively safe in terms of bone and kidney. Due to the concern of bone and kidney from PrEP, we are now looking for the other agent that have less bone and renal toxicity. It is TAF. TAF is the drugs that active against HIV in the cells, and TAF can go into the body and metabolize to tenofovir. And tenofovir from TAF penetrate very well to the target cells, and very minimal amount of TAF, tenofovir from TAF go to bone and kidney. So this is the reason why TAF has low renal and bone side effect comparing to TDF. This is the data from this GO trial that look at the efficacy of TAF plus FTC versus TDF plus FTC for HIV prevention. This trial conducted in nearly 6,000 individuals, most they are MSM, and look at the rate of reduction comparing these two strategies. And this is non-inferiority trial, is the primary endpoint, and the second point of the DISCOVER trial was they look at the side effect of TAF on bone and kidney comparing with TDF. So in this report, on this primary analysis from DISCOVER trial found that the efficacy of both intervention is high in terms of prevention HIV transmission. However, TAF associated with significantly more favorable renal and bone outcome comparing to TDF. So I think in the future we have room for TAF, FTC for HIV prevention. So let's talk about the risk compensation and STI among PrEP users. This is the major concern when you start PrEP. You may think that the individual who will be on PrEP will not use condom anymore. That's true, because they already determined not to use condom. So however, there are some controversies on risk compensation of the people using PrEP. Some studies suggest that risk compensation is stable, is not affected by PrEP, and some studies suggest that risk compensation is very high in PrEP user. However, STI is very common in PrEP user. This is the data from Kaiser Permanente in San Francisco. They have the cohort and look at the HIV transmission rate after PrEP implementation in the communities. During 2.5 years of the study, in nearly many hundreds individuals who were on PrEP, they found no new HIV infection in this individual receiving PrEP in this cohort. However, after 12 months of PrEP use, 50% of individuals using PrEP diagnosed with any STI. 1/3 of them have rectal STI, a third had chlamydia, a third had gonorrhea, and 5.5% end up with syphilis infections. So STI is very common in PrEP use. So this is the reason why screening tool is very important. When they come back to get the refill, you need to screen our STI as much as possible. What about HIV acquisition during PrEP? Is this possible? Yes, it's possible. Most of the study show that suggest that in the people who were on PrEP and get HIV, most of them were non-adherent people. They don't stick with the schedule. And only few cases that reported in the literature that have HIV during PrEP despite they have very high adherence. So far, there are few cases of case report that have breakthrough HIV infection despite PrEP, and these individuals, most of them receive drug-resistant virus from their partner, and from the analysis, these individuals have virus that resistant to tenofovir and emtricitabine from the partner. So this is the event that might occur, but the number of the cases is very, very few. Let's talk about implementations. This is the effect of implementation of PrEP in San Francisco. You can see that in San Francisco, the incidence of HIV infection is declined steady from 2006 to 2012. This is the effect of treatment as prevention. But then from 2012, after they implement PrEP, the declining rate of new HIV was very prominent after the start PrEP program in San Francisco. So this slide summarizes that both intervention, treatment as prevention, with combination of PrEP will reduce new HIV infection in the communities. Let's look at Thailand. In Thailand, we give PrEP and we put PrEP in our guidelines since 2014. But at that time, PrEP was not for free. And then we have generic PrEP in our countries. The price of generic version of PrEP in our country is $18 per month. So the price per day is cheaper than a cup of Starbucks. And with this price of the medicine, we are now implemented free PrEP in our HIV treatment program in our countries. So from the end of this year, next year, and later, Thai people who have risk for getting HIV, they can get PrEP for free. This is our national policy. However, I talk a lot about PrEP, but don't forget the other measure that can prevent HIV transmission. For example, risk reduction, needle sharings, treatment of STI, and don't forget that you need to talk about the other intervention together with when you give PrEP to your clients. In the future, PrEP may move from oral form to injectable form. We have newer injectable form of the PrEP are now being investigated in many countries. This is the example from ECLAIR trial that use cabotegravir injectable form for prevention, and they found that the level of protection is optimal for every 12 weeks interval. So this is the evidence and the benefits of PrEP and new PrEP. So I have very limited time for PrEP talk, but PrEP is also one of the tools for HIV prevention. This is the post-exposure prophylaxis. PrEP can prevent HIV infection, but PrEP should be initiated as soon as possible. Most of the data of PrEP derived from the animal study and maternal trial transmission model, and indicate that if you want to start post-exposure prophylaxis for HIV, it needs to be start as soon as possible and should be within 22 hours after exposure. And the duration of the PrEP should be exactly 28 days. There are some difference among PrEP guidelines among the countries, but most of the countries suggest that PrEP should be 3 drugs in combinations. The backbone should be TDF, FTC, or TDF plus TTC, and the third agent. This is in the resource risk guideline suggests that integrase inhibitor should be used, or if possible, you can choose between dolutegravir or raltegravir. If integrase inhibitor is not available, you can use boosted PI for PrEP. However, in some countries, they use the other options. For example, in Thailand, PrEP regimen, we use a lot of TDF, FTC plus ripivirine, because ripivirine in our country is very cheap and affordable. So in summary, PrEP can effectively reduce HIV infections in high-risk populations, and PrEP requires the patient understanding and adherence. Side effects of PrEP are minor and manageable, and PrEP should be used with other biomedical methods for HIV prevention. I at this slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Pucheren. Please hold your questions until the end of today's lectures. Our speakers will be delighted to answer your questions, either live or you can send me your paper questions later. Our next speaker is Dr. Shyam Aku. Dr. Aku is a medical professional who specializes in clinical pharmacology and therapeutics. He has extensive global experience in clinical research, health economics and outcome research, and scientific communications. He has conducted international conferences in diverse therapy, provided strategic guidance for product launches, conducted clinical trials, did real-life evidence generation for products, and has published articles in internationally peer-reviewed journals. Dr. Aku holds a diploma in health economics and market access from the European Market Access Society and possesses over a decade of experience in working with various multinational pharmaceutical companies. Presently, he heads the medical affairs for emerging markets at Hetero Labs Limited. Ladies and gentlemen, our second speaker for this luncheon symposium to talk about digital innovations for medical adherence in HIV prevention, Dr. Shyam Aku.
Very good evening. So I'm going to talk about some digital innovations for medication adherence. Now, we've seen from Dr. Opas the importance of adherence, because for the success of PrEP, adherence is something which is really critical. So these are my disclosures. I'm an employee of Hetero Labs Limited. So we've seen from IPRIX and partner study that adherence is really important. If you look at the overall population, the reduction in HIV infections rate ranged from 44% to 75%. But when we look at those who are adherent to therapy, and when the blood levels were checked in these patients, we know that with good adherence, the rates are about 92% in the IPREX study, and then in the partners PrEP study, it is about 98%, 90%. So this lays the importance of adherence. And when we look at some of the reasons for poor adherence, we know that forgetfulness and busy schedules is one of the key factors when we look at factors which are influencing the daily life. And this is pretty much in control of the customers and clients. The other important things are knowledge. I think now there's a lot of focus in education which is required in bringing about this awareness. Medication regimen, that is has to be taken once daily, and of course ED PrEP 2+1+1, again leading to improper usage and low adherence. Socioeconomic factors, cost is one concern in few regions, stigma, social stigma, and side effects. Of course, this requires initial screening as well as educating the clients and customers, which can be overcome. And one of the things which is mentioned in the same article, that apps could be designed to display medication reminders, allow adherence self-reporting, and even to incentivize good adherence through rewards. So definitely there's a role which digital technology can play in trying to improve the adherence rates in these clients and customers. So when we look at the new infections, most of the new infections are occurring in the younger age group from 15 to 24 years. And when we look at it for Philippines, it is 69%. So this age group contributes to majority of the new infections which are occurring. And we know that if you look at the rate of increase in the Southeast Asian regions, Philippines is having one of the highest rates of 174% increase in new cases in the last 1 decade. So there are about 12,000 new cases which are seen in a year, and predominantly, just to reiterate, that this age group of 15 to 24 is the one which is contributing to almost like 69%. Now, how does it correlate to the digital use in Philippines? So when we look at it, there's a good amount of digital penetration in Philippines and currently holds at around 60% plus. And this is likely to increase over a period of time. Now, when we look at the age group, we know that the median age group of internet users is 24 years. So we see there is a correlation of use of digital technology, which can actually help us lead to intervention strategies in trying to improve adherence. This is another study, and where we know that usually the adherence rates has been about 40 to 60% in various studies. And one of the reasons, the most common reason quoted for missing a dose was forgetting to take the tablet, which accounted for almost like 47%. And busy schedule was about 19%. So these are modifiable factors which can actually lead to improving the adherence. The EPIC study, this is one study which looked at intervention using an SMS-based reminder. And we know that overall, over a period of time, we know that this is a 9-month study which was done. And at the end of 9 months, if there is an intervention with reminders, 56% were adherent versus 40%. And when we look at the overall visits per those clients who are adherent to therapy, we know that it is 72% with intervention of SMS and reminders versus about 60% without any intervention. So there is a role of reminders which can actually improve the adherence. So in Philippines, we at Hetero are partnering with Life for Me Plus. This is a digital app from Switzerland, and we are trying to promote this app so that users can actually use a simple tool for their reminders. So a little about Hetero, like we are a global company with 25 years of experience, a strong global footprint. We are having 36 state-of-the-art manufacturing facilities. We have a presence of 126 plus countries, and all our plants are approved by stringent regulatory authorities. When we look at the ARV portfolio and our global presence, we are present globally, and we have one of the largest portfolio of ARVs, and we work with global foundations to help reach ARVs. And we have a strong network in about 126 countries. Now, though we are a strong company with a good portfolio and reach, however, what we feel is that there is a need to go beyond the pill in trying to improve and do something for our customers and clients. That is where we are partnering with Life for Me Plus, which is a Switzerland-based company who also aim to prevent HIV. And this app is available for free to download and is in about 156 countries. One key feature is that it lays a convenient platform for direct contact of patients with their physicians. So this lays a platform wherein the physician can actually intervene and look at the adherence patterns for their clients and customers. So this is a very simple app designed only for PrEP. It is available on iOS and Android platforms, and it's very simple to register. So you register with the country, and then the reminder setup which can be done based on when you're taking the pill. And then every day there's a reminder which comes up in the mobile app. The customer can just see if they have taken it or not, and then they can put it at a later point. And this actually gives a record of the adherence. Added to this, they can also add some tests into the app, so that gives a reminder for their STIs. Now, as Dr. Opas mentioned, that there is a high rate of STIs, so these clients have also need to be screened for the sexual transmitted disease, and this app can help in that. Also, there's an info page which gives some details on what's happening in this HIV prevention. So this is about the app. Now, if you look at PrEP, now we are moving on to an era wherein the newer injectable forms are coming up. In terms of PrEP, if you look at the R&D, the research and development, what is happening, there is this smart pill concept. It's a new concept under development in US. This is research being done in University of California, San Diego, where they are trying to use a sensor. So they have a sensor which is clubbed with the pill. So you have the sensor and the pill, which is tenofovir emtricitabine, combined into one pill. Now this pill is ingested with the sensor. Now once it is ingested, there is a patch, an adhesive patch, which is kept on the abdomen. So once this pill is taken, this patch on the abdomen actually senses that the client or customer has taken a pill. Now this can send out a signal to the mobile app and actually give you a record of the exact utilization of the pill. There's a central server which gives the information as well as reminders. And if you look at, this is about one patient who has used this, it's under trial, about 6 clients have used it. This shows exactly, the time at which the pill has been taken. So this is about a client who's been very irregularly using it in terms of the timing. And this can actually help in having this data. So now, when we look at the other aspects of digital use, we have one concept of P3, which is being done in Duke University, US, where they're using gamification as well as looking at interventions which can actually bring about a behavioral change for improving adherence. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Aku. So let's now proceed to the question and answer portion. For anybody who has questions, please approach the mic, but let me be the first one to throw Dr. Pucharen my first question. The WHO states that one of the criteria for starting someone on PrEP, the first one is having an HIV positive partner. Now, with the advent of U equals U, do you think the WHO should kind of revise this messaging wherein a partner who has HIV but is undetectable can be taken off the list?
So this is very good questions. Right now, my recommendation is if you have a partner and you have trust partner, and they your partner is HIV positive and taking treatment very well and have suppressed virus, the undetectable viral load, PrEP may not be needed.
Yes, thank you. So that would be a good thing to see so that it can actually match the messaging of U equals U in the future.
Yeah. This is a UU effect. This is very, very important in my practice because right now I have a lot of discordant couples. They need to want to have a baby.
Yes.
Yeah. So the other one of the option is they have sex without condom, and they want the partner who is HIV infected should be on the treatment with undetectable viral load, and they had conception without condom and no more PrEP used.
Yes. So I look forward to seeing that in the future in certain commentaries. Oh, thank you. Would you want to join me on stage?
Sure.
Thank you. Dr. Ako, can you join me as well? So other questions? So one of the side effects of our PrEP, that especially tenofovir component, is known to be decrease in bone mineral density throughout time. Now, in the Philippines, I don't think a bone scan is quite a cost-effective measure for either screening or monitoring. But can you give us some data, at least how soon do we see the detrimental effects of osteoporosis, so we can at least plot a time in the future to when we schedule the important test?
Most of the PrEP users, if we look at the bone density and measure bone density over time after PrEP initiations, most of the bone density loss occur in the first 6 months after PrEP initiations and will be prominent during the first 6 months. And then after 6 months, the bone density loss will be stable. So I think that the optimal time for checking bone density is before and at 6 months after PrEP initiation. Just only in some specific, some individuals who have risk of getting osteoporosis. We don't usually recommend that to have bone mineral density checked in every people who are on PrEP because most of them are young.
Yes. For Dr. Aku, earlier when we talked about innovations in adherence tools, I mentioned that there are some applications or softwares which give calls as reminders. What do you think is the benefit of having an app instead versus a call?
Yeah, definitely. So having a call may not always be helpful, and there may be some reservations for people to actually go take a call and make a bi-directional conversation in that. And more often, if you look at the age group right now, this is an age group. It's the generation of the millennials, right? So they want to be self-empowered. So having an app can actually help them, be in control of the things and help them be better empowered, and that actually builds the confidence. So moving away from calls, well, it may not always be feasible for them to take a call as well. So having an app would be quite easy and quite convenient.
And empowering as well.
Yeah, empowered as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I have my last question for Dr. Pucheren. Some patients will transition from occupational PEP to PrEP. There has been some news of possible delay in the seroconversion for patients who are hepatitis C positive. Is there any truth to this? Or could we safely, right after the 28th day on occupational PEP, transition, for those who complete it, transition to daily PrEP if they find themselves at risk for HIV infection?
It can be started soon.
There's no need to delay this.
Yes, yeah.
All right, thank you. So, once again, no more questions? But sige, last na lang, last question. We talked about risk compensation a lot today, and so for those who don't know, risk compensation is taking more risks while on PrEP, which will therefore remove the principles of being on prevention. So you mentioned the importance of screening for STIs. However, in the Philippines, this is not routine, especially for gonorrhea and chlamydia. What we do have are some tests that test for the PCR, which are quite expensive and is actually more expensive than the treatment itself. Do you know of any other recommendations for easier diagnostics for the asymptomatic patient on PrEP for the screening of gonorrhea and chlamydia?
So the recommendation is if you have NAT test available, you should apply NAT test because of most of the people with STI and they are asymptomatic. But this is a problem in many resource-limited settings that the method for STI screening is only symptom-based. So I think that in the future we may have the option that we have affordable tests for STI screening, and we may implement this in our PrEP user. But right now, if you are using symptom-based, it might be okay, but you should give the education to your patient that they may need to report the symptom when they come back to get the PrEP. And also STI is very common in PrEP user. All of these STI are manageable. The risk of getting STI, other STI, is not the factor that you delay or prevent them from getting PrEP, because HIV infection is a major concern in this circumstance.
Thank you so much. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our esteemed speakers today. Please, everyone, give them a round of applause. We learned so much about PrEP and PEP and the digital innovations for adherence. If any of you are interested in becoming PrEP prescribers, please approach your friendly infectious disease specialist or our friends from Camber. Thank you, everyone, and good day.
Ladies and gentlemen, the event may have come to an end, but it's just the beginning for each and every one of us to be stewards in eradicating the looming pandemic of HIV. Thank you very much.